Good afternoon to everyone. Hope all of you all are doing well today. Sorry for the couple of minutes delay that we faced, but to all the Malayalis out there, Hridayam Naranja Swagatham. Welcome to this show. You will know why this is so special as we go along. Welcome to the IFFM Film Club session with Anjali Menon. I know we can all do a little small round of virtual applause in our homes, clap for her, just let her know this is the new normal to do things. So let's go by the policy. I'm sure Anjali will appreciate it. Now, I know many of you might be wondering who I am. So before I begin and confuse you, I'll let you know a little bit about myself as well. My name is Fred Jameson, and I'm a Melbourne-based actor, director, and also do a full-time job handling financial solutions for clients. So basically, in Malayalam terms, we can say, "Ellam korchakka cheyyunnathu payyanana, avadunnu ividunnokka cheyyum." So some of you, I'm sure the IFFM peeps would know me as Raj from Hollywood Meets Bollywood Report, where I've had the pleasure of being part of this wonderful IFFM family since a couple of years now. And some of you may know me for many of the other little works that I've done in and around Melbourne and Australia. But personally, if any of you ask me what's the best thing that I've done, or what is the highlight of my career, that would definitely have to be the introducing the amazing panel of guests that we have here today. and without a second question, I would say that. So I'm not going to waste more time on myself. We'll get back straight into the star of the night. And let me introduce the guest of honor for today. A little bit of backdrop about her before I introduce her to you all is she's a Kerala State Award winner. She's a National Award winner. She has won awards for both her directorial skills as well as her screenplay, which connects with me very well. She's a role model to many, but an inspiration for all. A person of few words, but a large impact. And as my mother says, she's the ideal inspiration for all women to look up to, and I agree hands down. Appam nammala Malayaligalude ellam abhimanamaya Anjali Menon. Welcome, Anjali. Welcome.
Thank you for that hyper glowing introduction. I really don't think I deserve that much.
I mean, ever since since the time that I've been telling my friends that I'm going to be able to do this, and Anjali Menon is coming here. It's been like everyone in and around Melbourne, not only Melbourne, across Australia, all of them have been like when is she coming? Time, send me the details. Ellarkum bhayangara excited. So
that's incredibly sweet.
I will just take 1 minute of a few minutes from the rest of us for all the Malayalis attending here today, and from their behalf, I would like to ask you a small request. Ellarum idu kekkan they're waiting to hear. So from your side about your experiences and your journey in these amazing things, which I'm sure Mr. Rajeev will cover in the wonderful interview that we're waiting for. But ഈ കാണുന്ന ഇവിടെ നമ്മളുടെ കൂടെ കാണുന്ന മലയാളികൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഒരു ചെറിയ നമ്മുടെ നാടൻ മലയാളി സ്റ്റൈലിൽ ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു ഹലോ ഒന്ന് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാം.
അത് നാടൻ മലയാളി സ്റ്റൈൽ എവിടെയും പോകാൻ പോണില്ല. It's very much me, so that's just going to be there. If you don't mind, I will lapse into Malayalam for a bit. I almost sound like one of my characters now. ഇവിടെ മലയാളികൾ ആയതുകൊണ്ട് മാത്രമല്ല നമ്മുടെ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു ജേർണിയിൽ ഒരുപാട് എല്ലാ രീതിയിലും പ്രോത്സാഹനം തന്നിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഗ്രൂപ്പ് എന്ന നിലയിൽ എനിക്ക് ശരിക്കും ഒരുപാട് നന്ദിയുണ്ട്. ഇങ്ങനത്തെ ഓരോ ഫോറം വരുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളൊക്കെ ആയിട്ട് നേരിട്ട് പങ്കുവയ്ക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ചില ആശയങ്ങൾ അതൊക്കെയാണ് ശരിക്കും നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ഗ്രോത്തിന് ഒരുപാട് സഹായിക്കുന്നത്. And I really want to thank everyone for being here today. And belated Onam wishes also to everybody.
And happy Onam wishes, belated Onam wishes to you too, Anjali ma'am.
Thank you.
Before I will pass on and I will let me too take on with the majority of the interesting and the meaty part of this show, I will just ask one more question on behalf of all the Malayalis itself. Not a lot of people understand the depth of the talent that you portray, because we come and watch the movies, we see the stars, Nammal stars they memorize that or they immortalize those characters on screen, but we miss out the directorial and the screenplay work that you guys put in and the magic you create from a script to film. Could you tell a little bit about that, share your journey of how it transforms from a script to a film through your eyes?
That's a very, very long conversation, Fred.
Simple.
it's see the simplest way to say it would be that, you know, in Sanskrit or Malayalam for that matter, a character is called a kathapatram, and it's the patram is the vessel through which the story flows. And
Yes.
put quite simply, if the actors are embodying those characters, then that is the way it should be. You should not sense the presence of a writer and a director there. That needs to be the connect of the moment. And I think that's a big compliment when people forget that someone's directed and written these things. I personally take it as a compliment.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I mean, as an actor's perspective, I completely understand where you're coming from, and that's couldn't have asked for a better answer. Thank you so much for that, Anjali. Now, next, before we continue on to the more interesting part, I would love to take a moment to introduce a person who's very close to my heart, and without whom this day, this festival, and this IFFM Club event that we are here today wouldn't be a possibility. Meetu Bhomik, who's the director of the Indian Film Festival, Melbourne. Meetu, your words are always captivating and worth listening to. Please do say a few words for us while we're watching here.
Um, uh, Thank you so much, Fred. You brought such a lovely energy and so much warmth. Thank you so much for doing that. And Anjali, we are so happy to have you. I am just waiting for the day when we can welcome you in person to our beautiful, small, warm-hearted film festival. But till then, the Zoom will have to do. But I think crossing paths with you has been one of the nicest things that's happened in the lockdown. And we've just been writing to each other every now and then. And I think I'm sure we'll be working with you a lot more. And belated Onam greetings to everybody who's joining us today. Thank you so much for being a part of our IFFM Zoom Club. This film club was designed because we are all in lockdown and we are all in isolation, but that does not mean that we can't stay connected, we can't enjoy films, and we can't talk to amazing, inspiring filmmakers like Anjali Menon. Just a few house rules. Everybody is on mute, but please feel free to uh, write your questions, type your questions on the chat, and our team will choose the questions which are more relevant, and then Rajeev will give you an opportunity to ask at the end. I know some of you get a bit disappointed when we are not able to take your questions, but we have a little time, which is why we can't. But I'm sure we're all going to have a great time today. And now I'll welcome Rajeev Masand, who's been a wonderful, wonderful friend of the festival. And we are so lucky to have him, and one of the most respected reviewers and journalists in India. So Rajeev, it's all over to you, and thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Anjali.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Meetu. Thank you. Anjali, it's so good to have you with us today. We're really so lucky that you could join us today at the IFFM Film Club. And you know what you said earlier was actually quite lovely. You said, you said you take it as a compliment when one can't see the puppeteer, when one can't see the strings in a sense. And I understand what you mean. And it's true of your films. Anjali, I want to start by saying, big fan of your work. And over the last week, I got a chance to rediscover some of the films that I've already seen, and some of the films actually which weren't available. So thankfully through links, I was able to see Manjari Kodu and the Kerala Cafe short, which I was really excited to be able to finally watch. Anjali, your films are regarded by many as the best entry point into Malayalam cinema. You want to discover Malayalam cinema, watch Anjali Menon's films, and usually the one that's cited is Bangalore Days. Anjali, what quality would you say, in your opinion, makes your cinema representative of this new wave of Malayalam cinema?
I think, first of all, thank you, Rajeev, for all those glowing words. I'm so glad that you could watch the movie. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
When you speak about the new wave of Malayalam cinema, I frankly think that I'm one of the more conservative ones, because I think, really all boundaries are being crossed. The envelope is really being pushed, and that's fabulous. I look to all of those exciting filmmakers for inspiration, because I think they're really going out there. I think I'm one of the more conservative, of the lot. And if anything, I think the only maybe small advantage that might be in the films is that I myself am not of the sort of 100% true blue Keralite. I am not. I've not grown up there. I very much have a hybrid consciousness, and possibly because of that, the kind of subjects I've taken, and maybe the treatment of these films is also like that. And that's possibly why people find maybe there's a connect there. I think that's which is actually a disadvantage when you're trying to make a certain kind of cultural cinema. But in some ways, maybe I represent that generation which has kind of moved away from the homeland and still is seeking roots there. So maybe it's that.
It's funny you say that. We'll talk more about that later, because but the truth is there is an authenticity in your films which is kind of unmistakable, and we'll talk about that. But I want to ask you, Anjali, you've only made 3 features in what, 18 years? I mean, since you started, there's of course Manjari Kurur, there's Bangalore Days, and there's Kude. Are you happy with the pace at which you work? I know you've written, of course, and you've made the short in the anthology, but are you happy? I mean, would you have preferred to do more work?
Firstly, I must say it's not 18 years. Wow, that sounds like a lot. It's 30
well, it was since you made your short, I guess.
No, since I actually made Manjari Kuru first, which was in 2007. We started shooting in 2007, and then we did the short in 2009.
No, sorry. I meant the short at the film school short, which Asif.
At the film school. Oh yes, that's been ages, of course. That's been ages since then. That was 2002, 2003, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And my pace at work is incredibly slow. I'm a snail, but if I had to give up everything else I was doing to do more films, I'm afraid not. I think I love my life.
Sure.
I love the things I'm doing outside of filmmaking as well. And this kind of a slow pace gives me the energy to do that. And also a lot of my film and my writing is derived from those things. So if I didn't take that time, I wouldn't be doing these films. So yeah, it's a give and take.
Right. Bangalore Days is the one, Anjali, that broke out, that became the crossover hit. And like you said, it also, I mean, of course, it in Kerala it was the massive hit, but it also became the primer for those living outside of Kerala and actually outside of India as well, who kind of discovered this film and became invested in the characters. Were you prepared for the enormous success and popularity of that film? I like to think of it as, and only for lack of a better example, or just to create a reference, the sort of Dil Chahta Hai of Kerala. This was a film that sort of represented a generation that was feeling very unrepresented at the movies until then. It spoke in a language that was modern, that felt familiar. It felt like a new kind of cinema. These were characters that you could identify and relate to, and it was a simple story. Were you prepared? I mean, I know that you set out to write a much more commercial film than the first one, but did you anticipate just what it became?
Not for a moment. Not for a single moment. In fact, there were huge risks associated with the project when we started off. My producer was a filmmaker who had a track record of every film of his running 100 days. He was a filmmaker like that. And when he wanted to produce, his only condition was that if I produce it, will be a commercial, entertaining film. And we are friends. He's actually the director of Ustad Hotel, Rashid. So while just chatting, I happened to just talk about a concept, and he suddenly just got onto it and said, if you're directing it, I'd want to produce it. And I said, but are you sure? Because it's not as easy as that. And Rajeev, the number of risks associated with that project were quite crazy, frankly, because we had actors. Each of these actors at that point were not the hugely successful people they are today. And they were not the risk, mind you. They were not the risk. The biggest risk was me, because I was in a way this sort of what people would like to think, some kind of arty, filmmaker trying to make a difference. By fluke, she had written something like Ustad Hotel, but when she directs, God alone knows what will happen. Secondly, I really put everything I had understood about the medium by till then, but that did not really meet the regular standards of Malayalam cinema at that point. And they found it weird the way I was working, the kind of things we were doing. They were very strange. There were so many people who were critical about how we were making this film. And we shot for 75 days, which was unheard of at that time. Which, no Malayalam film, would go beyond 60 days or something, unless it was like this really epic film. And everybody thought I didn't know what I was doing. And, this was all money down the drain. I remember people going and telling my producer, saying, sorry, boss, sorry, you're going to have to take a hit this time. I remember that. And this guy kept his faith in me. And he said, just make the film you're making. And he did not interfere. He gave me my freedom to do what I wanted. With all the madness, he stuck with us. And it wasn't like, it was not that he was in this place where he could afford to lose this money. No, absolutely not. So there were even times we were putting racing into the film, which was crazy. We were working without a choreographer, for the racing stunts. Now, all of that is a really crazy mix. And finally, when it happened, the day previous to the release, we were checking the prints in the cube and everything. And I hadn't slept for 56 hours straight. And I was just wanting to sleep. And I kept slinking in my seat. And Anwar was sitting next to me. And what I will never forget is him saying, Anjali, go to sleep. It's okay. The film's a hit. And, I know producers who will pat your back after the whole thing. Right. But how many will do it the day before the release? And that meant so much to me. And yet I went to the theater with my heart in my mouth, because this was make it or break it. There were enough people to write my obituary with this one. And I'm thankful that didn't happen.
But you cast, like you said, I mean, they were not the superstars or the level of stars that they are today. I mean, there was Dulquer, of course, there was Nivin Pauly, there was Nazriya, there was Fahad, there was Parvati. I mean, how did that casting happen? It just, you look at that now and you go like, wow, I mean, that is the dream team in a sense.
The thing is, they were all very popular. Okay, they were all very popular, but among the younger crowd, they hadn't, they were still all, I think all of us in a way turned a corner with the film. And it was not just Bangalore Days. At the same time, there were other films and projects that they were doing, which also came out and became big hits. So by the end of the shooting itself, all of them, their profiles had really risen. And that made the risk bigger for us, that, wow, we have all of them in one thing. Parvati had just come off Marianne. And I remember saying, maybe we should ask her. And folks were like, why would she do a Malayalam film after she's, gone and done such a big Tamil film? But, she was really looking to doing a Malayalam film, and it worked out great for us. Similarly for Dulquer, for Fahad, for Nivin, for Nazriya, for each of them, this was going to be a fun film to do. But what I sensed was that none of them felt too much pressure because it was shared. Right. No one felt, okay, this film is on my shoulders. They didn't feel that. And they seemed to have a really good time because of that, because that kind of stress wasn't there. And I think that chemistry is what really shows up on screen.
I want to ask you, and I think that this is something that everyone who's on this film club today, who are aspiring filmmakers or writers, will probably benefit from. Anjali, before Bangalore Days, you had made Manjari Koru, which to me is actually, it's my favorite of your films. I think there is a level of maturity and insight and depth that is very rare and it's very precious. And when you were moving from that consciously to make a commercial film, what did you say to yourself about holding on to your integrity and your identity while moving on to a bigger project? How do you hold on to essentially who you are and not compromise that while maybe making a movie with higher stakes? Because Manjari Koru was this beautiful story of a little boy who really understands life and really understands relationships when he comes to his village and spends time with his cousins and with and watches his family up close and realizes really and as do we, that children actually are purer. They're actually the purer species. And and I mean, what to you was the key going into Bangalore Days from that, not giving up, because that was also very it was a beloved film. It was critically acclaimed. Not losing that while still making a bigger film.
I mean, that's the constant challenge, I think, Rajeev. It's not just about one film to the other. I think constantly one has to experiment with things. One has to aim in a little different way with every film, but to hold on to who you are or who you believe in and what your expectation is from a film in terms of quality, not just in terms of production quality, but in terms of the soul quality, in terms of the story that you're telling. That is a constant challenge. And for me, if that is not there, then the film just doesn't work. No matter what you pad it up with. With Bangalore Days, it was quite a peculiar journey because I'd made Manjari Guru, and I'd really, I think, fought so many battles to bring that film out. And finally, at the end of 4 years, when it came out into the theaters, very few people watched it, and I felt like it was a slap on my face. And some people came and said, okay, it's ahead of its time. Look at the other films which are running. They're not like your film, but that is what the audience wants and everything. And none of it feels very good when a film fails. And it's not, people say, oh, how can you think of it as a failure? When it's a financial failure, you are responsible for that. I will never say the film is a failure, but financially, when something doesn't work, then you are definitely responsible for that. And that is, for me, that was, there was a need to prove that I can be a financially viable filmmaker. And for that, one has to really understand the craft of how, this is done. This is a completely different game. And I remember the scripting process of Bangalore Days. I wrote the first draft very quickly. And the first half hasn't really changed from my first draft. It hasn't really changed too much. But the second half, I must have written some, 12 drafts of it. Because the second half was very different in each of the drafts. And every time I would bounce it around, it wasn't working, either for them or for me or for anything. And finally, we locked on a certain draft, and I wasn't happy with it. And one day, my producer Anwar walks into my house, which we were using as a production office then. And I was just sitting and looking at this notice board, which had script notes all over the place. And right in the middle, I had made one big bubble which said, "Where is the soul?" And he stood there and he started laughing. And I still remember him taking a picture of that and sending it to me. And his advice to me was, you know what? You're not used to doing commercial films. This is how it is. Okay, so don't wait for the soul. And I just wasn't convinced. So we started prep with the crew, with everybody, locations and everything. And I made one last request to my producer and my DP. And I said, guys, I want to change the second half. Just fly with me. And they just looked at me, realizing I'm completely crazy. And I said, I will not change stuff production-wise. We'll use the same locations. We'll use the same actors. Everything will be the same. But there are some things I really have to move around. I have to change. And
how many days away from shoot were you all when you did this?
This was within a month of shoot. Wow. Within a month of shoot. And I think the final thing was locked a week before the shoot. 1 week before the shoot. And when I went about doing that, we changed stuff, but the actors, everybody came on board. They said, okay, fine, whatever you feel is good. And then when, that final draft really happened, I actually pulled in stuff from an earlier draft that I had. And then it sat with me. Then it felt, okay, this is commercial, this is everything, but this feels, it's at least aligned to who I am. And so I think it's just about being honest to yourself. And, when you're not satisfied with being able to admit that, and to be able to say it. Because if you suppress that, that's the biggest risk. That really is the biggest risk.
The thing that strikes me about your films is that they're all very authentic. I was telling you this earlier. They come from a place of real honesty and authenticity. And I have to ask, does it have to come from a personal place to be able to find that authenticity? Because very often you watch a film that feels completely authentic, and then there's a moment, there could just be one moment that kind of throws you out of the film because it doesn't feel like it belongs there. It doesn't feel like it came from the same place as the rest of that film. And the thing about your films is that there is you strike that consistently authentic kind of tone. Are all of these stories rooted in a very personal space? I mean, we don't need specific details. Or where do you find the authenticity then?
No, because see, I cannot possibly be so many people, right?
Correct.
So, the thing is, when we talk about these films taking time, it's also because each of these films have sort of, ensemble characters. There are many of them, and so there are many stories within that one story as well. And no, they don't all come from a personal space. Most of them don't come from a personal space. But I think empathy is the biggest thing that powers writing. And for good or for bad, I am an empath, and maybe too much so. But to be able to make something personal, to be able to observe. I mean, these are not autobiographical, but they can easily be biographical. You catch moments, you catch characters, you catch feelings, and all these sort of kind of how do we say, they sit and simmer within you, and that is when a story emerges. And I think that kind of empathy really takes us to the root of the feeling of that moment. How would that person have felt when they went through this particular thing? And if there is anything personal, I think I'm, paranoid enough to camouflage it so much that you'd never guess. So for me, maybe the journey of Aju's character trying to fight back defeat irrespective of everything, for me that comes from a very personal space.
Right.
But not the others.
Not the actual incident, right.
Yeah. So then that feeling is, I think, what we have to hold on to. Even when we're working with the actors, see, I'm not the only person responsible for this authenticity. The actors, the DP, everybody has to work towards creating that world. And when we go for take after take, it's not that process of, okay, this is what I want, number 8 is what I want. No, that's not the idea. We're exploring to find what is there and which is the most honest take. That is what I'm going after. Not that I have a premeditated thought that this is what I'm waiting to get. Not at all.
Do you have a lot of rehearsals and workshops before you'll get to set? I mean, how do you? At what point does the cast come on the same page? I mean, of course, these are intelligent actors that can read a script and even read what's within the lines. But at what point do you all kind of reach a way of doing it that you're happy with?
Well, actually, the process starts when I first meet them. We try to exchange enough about one another where I need to get a sense of who this person is. I really can't cast without meeting someone, because there's something about an individual, vibe that you want to see whether this person would be emotionally, physically available to this character. Whether that quality is there, and if it's
but
there,
do you also write keeping in mind actors?
I never write keeping in mind actors, but once I've had a conversation with an actor and I feel, yes, this is going in that right direction, then I do bring in the actor's quality into the character. There are small things which come in, and I think it gives them little pegs to hold on to that character. And maybe these may be very personal, small, little private things sometimes. But yes, I do engage in that process. So for me, a lot of writing happens even after the casting. So it's a continuous process of revising it and changing it to bring it closer to them and to bring them closer to the character as well. So you were asking about when that happens.
Yeah.
That happens once we've agreed to work together. Once we've agreed to work together, then there are a whole lot of conversations, and every actor is so different. It's not that I have the set process, but I try and mold myself to every character and every actor, because there are some actors who just don't like to rehearse. With them, it will be a set of conversations. Some like to be inspired with other material. There are actors who like to receive poetry. There are other actors. One thing I wouldn't say is, I wouldn't say, hey, go watch this film. That's how we want to play this character. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But I definitely, give all kinds of references. Sometimes it's images, it's pictures, it's poetry, words, anything. Sometimes an incident you read in the papers, anything. You just keep feeding that emotional side of them. And all that goes in there somewhere. And sometimes it emerges, when they're taking the shot. Or it will stay there, because these are all, like you said, very intelligent people, very emotionally responsive people. And even when you send a piece of information in, the kind of feedback you get really informs you about this person. So for me also, it's a real learning of what this person responds to and what they don't respond to. So it's this constant, attempt to get more and more transparent, so that we can take it to where things are. So it's ongoing. I love doing workshops where we all loosen up, we all can speak openly, we have that trust. But when it comes to rehearsals, I don't go for too many. There is a certain amount of rehearsing which happens in the blocking and things.
Right.
And during the workshops, we may take a few scenes. I love writing scenes for the workshops which are, from the story, but are not in the film.
Right.
So with the cousins, for example, we would rehearse scenes of them bonding together as cousins. We had scenes written for those, but they are not in the film. But these three people had these common memories. Oh, remember we did that together.
Correct.
So that works towards other things that you do in the film.
Which is the part of the filmmaking process that you most enjoy, between the writing and directing the actors and then sort of assembling it all in the end?
I think the editing. I enjoy writing. I must say I enjoy actually every aspect of filmmaking. I love it. I love every single aspect, except maybe dubbing. The post-sync dubbing. Oh, I struggle there. So maybe that's why I don't enjoy that too much. But if you ask me that one place where I'm really excited, it's the editing, because the possibilities are amazing. And then it's no more, you don't have to, I'm not a very, how does one say, I'm not this totally extroverted person who can always deal with 100 people around.
Right.
Not that kind. So I love it when it's just my editor, myself, and our material.
Have there been instances where a scene or a film has changed quite considerably or drastically on the edit table? You've kind of gone in a direction very different from what you had envisioned it?
Yeah, plenty things. In fact, I think it's just the next step to writing.
Yeah.
Because see, you write something, and then very often I just say, who wrote this on set, though I might have written it. So, and then it's thrown out because it doesn't suit this location or this purpose or this actor or that moment. And maybe you've evolved the understanding of the character, and then you say, but this doesn't work. The writer didn't know this, but the director knows this. So I change it, and we improvise there. And the same thing happens again in the editing. Because something that you thought worked in a different way might work much better in yet another way. So then I'd rather not hold on to these things that, okay, we thought we will do that. What is there with you, make the best of that and move on. I don't feel terribly fettered by, work which has happened in the past.
The other unmistakable thing looking at your work from the outside is that you write into your scripts, sometimes very subtly, most often very subtly, and in the case of the short in Kerala Cafe, for example, a sort of feminist message or a feminist viewpoint. It's certainly the whole point of that short, but in other films it's there for you to notice if you do. Is that important for you, or how important is that for you? Does it come from a place that I want to do this, or is that just an extension of who you are, and therefore it will find its way into the writing or the filmmaking?
It is just part of who I am. So it is something which emerges, like you said, it's quite on the nose for Happy Journey. But
right.
For the rest, it'll be more subtle, because it's part of my worldview. So that will emerge. The other one, we had to actually drive a certain point across, and therefore it's the dialogues and everything sort of pinned onto that. So yeah, that's not it's not from the outside, it's from the within.
Right. We have to talk about Kure, which I discovered again recently and completely loved. It's one of those transportive films. It's actually what film should be, at least certainly the way I look at it. You want a film to be a transportive experience. You want a film to take you to the world that the filmmaker has intended to create. And I have this strange list. I'm going to expose myself completely. I make this list of films that I would love to live inside. Because they're just, because either they're really charming, or they're seductive, or they're people, they're populated by characters that you'd like to spend time with. And it ticked all of those boxes. And while it is a melancholic film, and while it talks about things that are, there's death, and there's parental resentment, and despite all of that, it's still a very warm, fuzzy kind of film. Where did that come from, Anjali? Where did that idea? Why was this a story you wanted to tell?
I don't know how articulate I can be about this, but there was. I found it very interesting that there are people who really build themselves illusions just to be able to go through life.
Yeah.
And to that particular person, it is completely justified, that world. And it is not to glorify any kind of mental health issues, but to that person, that's a very, very real moment. And the emotions of that moment, the interactions of that moment. I have personally known people like that, and I've witnessed their journeys. And to me, it felt important that even that side is something that we need to look at. It's not just about, just a fantasy thing. And I know a lot of people have seen the film in that way, but for me, it was about being able to see it through the lens of someone who's got this entire imagined reality.
Yeah.
And what would they do with that? What happens? So the beginning and the end are really dark in a way. And it's only the illusory time that, is of a very different quality. And I wanted to try and experiment with that, and to try and see how does one grapple with this kind of thought. And when you have someone in a certain position who's just taking a really wild leap without anybody else. So what happens then? So when I saw the Marathi original, the Happy Journey by Sachin Kundalkar, I was watching that film and I kept thinking, my God, if this, I just started thinking of all different ways that particular narrative could have gone. And then I spoke with Atul Kulkarni, who had asked me to watch the film, and with Sachin as well. And I said, hey, you know what, I was thinking of this and that. And then they said, listen, make it, go ahead, just go ahead and do it. And it just was one of those instinctive things. I said, let me just try that. And I learned a lot from that experience, because it was, I've been told that one of my strengths is dialogue and is interaction and all of that. And I thought, what if I didn't have dialogue as much as I do in the other films? And what if I tried to use other ways to communicate? And for me, that was the challenge in the film, that to take away from, the dialogue. I remember there was director Ranjit who plays the part of the father. And for one particular scene, we had about half a page of dialogue. And then he looks at it and he says, oh, thank God, some dialogue. So it was, for me, those were the challenges of that subject.
What was it like working with Prithviraj and Nazria after all those years? I mean, how does a director and an actor's relationship change and evolve when you come back years later? Both of you have gone off and made other films, in the middle. What was that like? Also, because you were casting, especially Prithviraj, so differently from what he's done. And it's such a beautiful performance. It's such a minimalist, deeply affecting performance. What was it like sort of going back and working with them?
It's Prithvi was actually, he worked very little with me in Manjarikulu because he was
correct. It's just that last bit, yeah.
Yes. In fact, we worked much more closely during the voiceover recording for that film. Right. And at that time, I realized that he's actually quite a different person from, the kind of roles he's doing. All of this sort of macho, the sort of machismo, what he does. And I felt he really deserved to do very vulnerable roles. I remember coming away with that thought. And so when this happened, when the subject of Kure came around, my first thought was that this needs to be somebody whose vulnerable side has not been exposed. And he just, I wouldn't have gone to anyone else. It just needed to be him. And I think there was a certain trust because we'd worked together before. And I think that trust has really helped him to let go a little more than he would do in other films, I think. And so I did get him in that vulnerable role.
Is it true that you had a largely female crew on Kure?
Not actually. It's Kude, like a lot of the other films, had many more men on set. But I think some of the press coverage was highlighting the women who were on set. And I think it was still, even with, I think, some 14 women, it was still less than 10%. So, it's way to go, much more to go.
Anjali, have you ever considered making a film in Hindi? I'm guessing there were offers. You speak Hindi. You have a home in Mumbai, if I'm not mistaken, as well. You studied in Pune, I think. You spent some time in Pune. Did that ever interest you?
See, for me, the films, it's not about which language. It's much more about whether the subject deserves certain language. That's it. So I'm comfortable in Hindi. It doesn't really faze me about taking a film in Hindi. But I think in the whole Hindi mainstream cinema, I think it's quite different how films are made. We're very pampered in the Malayalam indie space, where you have an idea, in 6 months you can make a film. So you're done and dusted. All of Bangalore days, right from I think our first day of prep till release was done within 6 months. So that's the speed at which we work. Whereas that is quite a challenge here. I think people have to be really committed to spend years and years waiting, and then years to make the film and all of that. So yeah, that's quite a challenge. I don't know if I'm ready to wait for so long, because it's this thing of my attention span is not great. So I need to make films quickly. So it's not that I'm sitting and waiting for 4 years to make one film and then I make the film. I'd be working on the film only for that particular year. So I think if I find a way within that to make films in other languages, I'm very happy to do that.
Would you say that streaming platforms have really made your films accessible? And I know that there are still 2 that aren't on a streaming platform yet. But I mean, do you feel like there's been a greater discovery, a rediscovery, if you like, or a bigger discovery of the films since they all landed up on, I think in the case of certainly Ustad Hotel and Bangalore Days and Kude on Disney Plus Hotstar, in India at least?
I think streaming platforms have definitely made the films more accessible to people who wouldn't watch them traditionally. Earlier, I remember when we were very young children, Doordarshan used to have these slots for regional films, and a lot of films covered in that way, that Sunday afternoon slot. But after that, there was this huge gap where we couldn't, access a lot of cinema which was happening within the country. You could watch Spanish and French, but you can't watch a Bengali film or a Malayalam film.
Unless you were willing to do all those unquestionable things and
Yes. I mean, if you
morally
believe in supporting piracy, God help you. So unless you go the torrential way, you can't really get it. But now that has changed. We have so many more options to access these films. But more than that, one thing, my last blog piece actually was on this particular thing about reviewing films. A lot of people started writing reviews for these same films once the lockdown started. And I was wondering suddenly, like, what has happened? So many reviews coming in, because apparently these people have had, the audience has had time to watch the films again and again, to digest it. And now the reviews which are coming are far more detailed, far more nuanced. And that is such a pleasure for us. As filmmakers, that is how you would like your film watched. Whereas, this whole thing of the first scene gets a Twitter review, the interval gets a Facebook review, and by the end of the film, your review is out on a blog. There is no digestion happening. And in cinema, isn't it that when you walk out, you walk with the characters.
And you want to spend some time with them. You want to spend some time sort of, I want a night to know how I really, at least overnight, to be able to spend with the characters, with the story, to know how I feel about it a couple of hours later at least. Yeah.
This whole tendency to sort of, throw out a review before you've digested your popcorn is a little, it's a little unnerving in a way.
Yeah.
We spend so much time making the film, so at least give it a day, before you review it. I think that's very healthy viewing that way, if you ask me. So that way, yes, I think it's really quite wonderful. Also, a lot of films which are sort of the low to medium budget, even in terms of financing these films and things, I think things can really open up with the OTT platforms. And finally, regional films have their own space, which you can put these films on par and then really judge the quality if you want.
Absolutely.
So there's no stopping the viewer anymore, which is great.
I know that you have very strong views, understandably so, about being referred to as a female director or as a woman director, as people tend to very often. And especially when they tend to look at your work through that lens or ask you to explain your film through that lens. But Anjali, have you ever felt discriminated as a filmmaker because of your gender? And I ask this question because I read often Hollywood filmmakers, women talking about how they just won't get some jobs. They won't be trusted with a tentpole film, or they won't be trusted with a big action movie or a superhero movie because the studio will think, oh, that's a woman, and that's not what she'll be able to do. Have you ever felt discriminated in terms of as a filmmaker because of that?
There have been many moments where I have felt that, but that was only till my work started really ringing in the box office.
Right.
Once the money starts to come, then gender doesn't matter.
Right.
Then everybody is willing to move
Correct.
on and forget what gender you are. But till then, till that moment, having faith, be it your industry, be it your producers, be it your crew, everybody, there is always this one concern, and that also I think is an inherited attitude. Simply because you have not seen how women work.
Correct.
Simply because you do not know. You assume that their gender will dominate everything else that they do. My gender is a part of me.
Right.
You call me the filmmaker woman, I can understand that.
Correct.
It's two different things, you see.
Right.
Foregrounding my gender before everything I do, I think is not really the best way to look at it. Because when you are trying to see anything that I'm capable of or that I'm doing through my gender, then you're already, taking up a certain perception.
Correct.
And what I think is that, there is this theory of Shankar Vedantam, which speaks about hidden, the unconscious, where bias is like, the ocean current. If you're swimming with the current, you think, oh, I'm a great swimmer. But if you're swimming against the current, you realize how strong the current is.
Right.
So I'm in that lot who realizes. But the good part of it is that if you have to be able to survive when you're swimming against the ocean current, you have to be a really good swimmer.
Right.
So it really helps you that way. It strengthens your skills, and you have to really be ready to take that challenge. That I think is a great experience. But this whole idea about gender, dominating everybody else's perception of what your capability is, until that box office rings, I don't think people should have to wait for that. If I even when that box office rings, it's only because you have an opportunity. There will be 100 others who could have done that.
Correct.
But we will never know because they haven't actually had that. Yes. So that whole thing about equal opportunities is a very important argument.
Why do you think that there are such few women making films in Malayalam cinema? I know that in Hindi cinema that number is rising. Is it fair to say that it's still not what it should be in Malayalam cinema?
It's still not what it should be in Malayalam cinema, Hindi cinema, or international cinema.
Yeah.
It's still not where it should be. But I will say in Malayalam too, it is rising, but very slowly. We have, be it India or Kerala, we have very strong attitudes towards the film industry. Where the film industry is not the most, respectable job industry is what most people perceive, which is not how it should be. And that perception prevents, more and more women from taking a step towards the industry. That perception prevents families from allowing, people to take up studies in this particular field. That perception stops people from supporting women in their families from taking up careers like that. Now, this whole thing about what an industry is all about, the kind of press that it receives all the time, all of this is what it's perceived, what creates that perception.
Yeah.
If we ensure that the industry has, the kind of basic SOPs put in place, which make it a woman-friendly space, I think that is definitely going to change. In our country, we have so many media institutes, so many film institutes where women are as many as men in number. But how many of these women actually get out into the industry and start working? Especially the film industry. We have many more women in the television industry, many more in print media and all of that. But when it comes to the film industry, the challenges are still far higher. And frankly, it's not just about, gender and women. The basic facilities and things available for people who work on our film crew are really, substandard compared to any international scale. And I think the improvement has to be at every single level. So, that will naturally include, when it comes to helping more people enter the industry who have been marginalized for the longest time.
Actually, you were one of the founding members of the Women in Cinema Collective, which was formed after the sexual assault of a female actor in 2017. Why was that important to create, and what has that collective achieved, would you say, so far?
Well, a lot of us were functioning as islands, I might say, where we all had our own experiences of this kind of discrimination, of this kind of bias, all playing against us. But we'd never come forward and shared it. And when one of our colleagues went through such a terrible experience, to just see how it was being played out and how it was being perceived and what was happening around her, rather than, actually provide the kind of support a fraternity can, we found her being isolated, and we found her, even the support which came was very much at a nominal level and not at a level that was actually making a difference. And when that happened, I think it awoke something in all of us, saying that we can't allow this to happen again and again. This is not how it should be. We need to make a difference. This is our professional space. This is an industry. This is one of the largest earning industries in our country. And yet we do not have what it takes. And therefore, to have a voice that was, made of all of these things to be said, it was important to come together. And I think in terms of what we have achieved, the very first bit of awareness that such a problem exists, that such bias exists, that such discrimination exists, that there are women in this industry who are not happy with how things are. That was very important to articulate, and I think that has come out very clearly. We had approached the government requesting for a study to be conducted in terms of, what is the status of women in the film industry. And the government appointed a judicial commission, a study commission, where they have come up with a study report saying that, yes, there are a lot of issues, and they have come up with recommendations, which we are waiting to see. Besides that, we have also taken up, our own research. We have taken, gotten into partnership with another organization called Sakhi, which works with gender, and a whole study report, again, covering 5 different film industries, has been put together after conferences and discussions about best practices to be held in a film industry. Now, these are significant things which have never been done before. Besides that, WCC, we are called the Women in Cinema Collective. WCC has also put together a research network called the Fatima Begum Research Network. Fatima Begum was the first woman director. I hate saying woman director, but I have to say that because she is She was the first director who was a woman in our country. And from Fatima Begum started that whole, possibility that women can be directing as well. So in her name, we have a research network. We have something called the P.K. Rosie Film Society. P.K. Rosie was the first woman who acted in a Malayalam film. She was hunted down and chased out of the state for that. But today, in her name, we have a film society which runs. So these are some of the outreach activities. We've been conducting campaigns against, digital cyber abuse of women. So all of these are very topical issues which we have been addressing. We've consistently been following up to put a system in place, a proper prohibition, prevention, and redressal system in place to work against sexual harassment. Though the Indian law says it should be in place, unfortunately, it's not being practiced in our film industry. And we've been really pushing what we can to make that happen. So yes, a few things have started off.
I've been told not to hog this. I have to open it out for questions. But before I open it out to questions, one last question, Anjali. The average time that you spend in between films. It's about 4 years. It takes about 4 years to get a new film out. When can we expect the next one? Is there something brewing? Since the last one was in 2018, are we going to have to wait another, 2.5 years?
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. It's that, see, it's not that I what I have made is the only, are the only films I've written, because
That's
there
right.
are always projects that one yearns to make and one likes to make. And I hope the next one is one of those, rather than, some that,
I start from scratch.
the things that I'm waiting to do. There is something that I have been really waiting for quite a few years to do, and I hope it's one of those. So let's see. We have to wait for the lockdown to, sort of ease, and only then can I get into it. But hopefully,
Thank you. I'm gonna take some names. Ashwin Krishna has a question. If we can unmute Ashwin Krishna so he can ask his question, please.
Anjali Menon. Yeah.
Ashwin, you're breaking up. You're breaking up.
do you want to
Ashwin,
type?
maybe you can type. Yeah, maybe you can type your question, Ashwin, and we'll read it out. Sorry, I've got Ashwin's question. Anjali, I'm sorry. By watching your movie, it creates an emotional difference in audience. So what is the secret behind this?
Well, I'm glad it creates an emotional difference. Well, I don't know just how to say that in a line. I think like Rajeev was saying, it's about trying to create that authentic world where, you can come into that world and live with us and experience the emotions of the characters. How we get there, I think, is a trillion things which are done to create that world. To first find a bunch of people who are mad enough as you to believe in that story and put that world together, and from there on to be able to be open to the moments that are coming to you. I think magic unfolds. We just have to be observant enough to just catch it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry
Vasant?
if I haven't answered that properly.
Thank you. Vasant, if we can unmute Vasant, please.
Anjali ji, namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
I'm very fortunate to be the exhibitor and distributor for both Bangalore Days and Go Day here in Melbourne.
Oh, lovely.
Starting off with that, my question is particularly for these two movies as well, because I had the opportunity to watch them all shows here in Melbourne.
Okay.
In Bangalore Days, there is a sequence where just before the big race, I'm sitting in front of the model racetrack and emotionally very down. And you've used that racetrack and his childhood toys as part of the narrative, lift his spirits. Similarly, in Kode, there is a sequence where Aloshi is fixing up the railway tracks. And that has become a part of the narrative there. And it basically brings a closure to that emotional distancing between Aloshi and Joshua. Is that a particular technique that you've used to place such a model or an object in your narrative? The reason I'm asking this is because there was a very similar thing in Ustad's Hotel, which is basically a painting on the wall, which also kind of lifts the spirits of everybody that it's associated with. So is that kind of a filmmaking technique or a storytelling technique that you've used?
Well, it's not, like I said, it's not something from the outside. I myself really enjoy miniatures and models and paintings and all of that. And somehow those journeys, when they come alive in even the inanimate objects around us, then that has a further dimension. So I'd like to create a world where we surround ourselves, little things we collect, what's on your table, these things define us, right? So I think in these scenes, what you're speaking about, those inanimate objects also have life. There is a certain growth that they have achieved through the narrative. And when they also join us in creating that emotional resolution for those characters, it makes a big difference. If Aju was left there alone with his toys in the racetrack, it wouldn't be enough. But the fact that his cousin sits down and brings him those toys, that is the part which helps him make that transition. So at the end of the day, it's the human elements in those which really help the characters transcend whatever they are going through. But yes, these inanimate objects, obviously, they embellish that whole experience. So I am somebody I'm a collector, I'm a hoarder of things. If you come to my house, you'll see hundreds of little things collected from all over the place. So that tends to happen with the films as well. So maybe I should start breaking this pattern next.
Thank you. Ridya S, please. Ridya S. If we can unmute Ridya.
Hello.
Hi, Ridya.
Hi.
I was wondering whether your moral conflicts, they play a part in your screenplay, because in most of the movies I see, very family oriented. Hello.
Hello?
So I was wondering whether the moral conflicts, they play a conscious part in your screenplays.
I think they may not be my conflicts, but they are definitely conflicts I see around. And when it comes to family, that's, I think, one of my areas that I really like meddling with. So it's interesting how it's the smallest, I like to call it the molecule of society. It's the smallest unit which shows us what is reflected within society. It's the smallest unit from within which we take out and take into society. And so that's a great playing ground. I've always felt like that. So a lot of these issues which we experience outside actually originate within the family. And it's a rich space to bring that out. So these conflicts may not always be mine, but maybe what I have observed around me. I'd like to say that.
Thank you. Sumesh KS, if we can bring Sumesh KS in. Do we have Sumesh? Then we'll move on to Meena Nambiar. If we can unmute Meena Nambiar.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Meena.
Hi, ma'am. Namaskaram. I had a question regarding, so recently I got to watch the video of See You Soon with Fahad interview, wherein they have mentioned that, they have made the movie wherein all the cast was confined in one of the buildings, in his own building, and then they have shot the movie. How much as a director do you think the content is more important or the infrastructure? So being in the lockdown for sure has brought in a lot of constraint for us with the infrastructure and the film unit. So how much do you think is the importance of all that? Can you shoot something like that, compromising the infrastructure for the content?
See, the thing is, content and form, what we call, there's always an inter-influence. Ideally, I would really like to think that the content should determine what the form should be. But now we are in very peculiar circumstances where we really cannot work the way that we're used to working. So what can one achieve inside this form? I think that is an interesting question. So to make a one-off film where you have only this available, so what can I do with the pieces I have? I think that's an interesting way to think also for a change. I wouldn't mind. I would really like to think that if you're put into that situation, that is what real creativity is, isn't it? That you're pushed to the wall, so you have to figure out, okay, what is the best I'm going to do out of this? When we did Happy Journey for Kerala Cafe, we were given like an itsy-bitsy budget and told to shoot it in 2 days. I went and approached an actor who said he was already working on those 2 days, so he could only do 2 nights. So, we had to figure out how we could do the whole thing. So I had to literally change the content as well so that we could accommodate big part of the film at night. But that eventually worked, in some respects. So I think one should allow the content and the form to influence one another. But at the end of the day, what is the crux of what you are trying to communicate? That should lie in the content more than the form. That's my perspective. I haven't seen See You Soon. I'm really looking forward to all, 3 actors I have worked with, 3 very, very exciting people.
Lovely. Thank you. If we can have Arvind Ajay Ghosh, please.
Firstly, big thanks to the organizers for this opportunity. And Anjali Ma'am, namaskaram, big fan of yours. My question is, like, all of your movies seems to revolve around a sense of like togetherness, being with a family, mostly like extended families or a close-knit family. Is that something you purposely keep in mind while you write?
It's again, like I said, it's from the within. It's not that I decide, okay, I need to put a family unit in there. Maybe I think like that. At the end of the day, whether it's a team, whether it's a band, whether it's a family, they're all families of different kinds, right? This whole, there's a collectivism which is very interesting. I really enjoy the dynamics within a collective group of people, and that tends to come. I'm not somebody who's seeking to speak of a loner's life as much. I'd rather see people, who are together and who need not be, always, it doesn't have to be a functional family. Dysfunctional families are even more interesting on screen. So the idea is to populate one's frame with characters that can bristle and get along and have energy between them. I think that is the idea.
Thank you. If we can get Deepa Avtani.
Hello.
Hi, Deepa.
Sir, thank you for the opportunity. Hi, Anjali. Firstly, I'm Deepa Avtani from Biscuit Showtime. Congratulations on your National Film Award for the Star Hotel. My question you've kind of already answered about, how there are, the review comes automatically, very quickly, that people don't even take a night to sleep over it. But my other question that I had was, there's something called a lollipop treat that you do on your sets. It's in one of your blogs that you had mentioned last year. If you could share that with us, like how did that come up as a filmmaker or somebody that in the past you've been part of crew, which you thought this is a relaxation mode. If you could share that with us.
This is actually, it comes from my first film. Just for the others to know, it's when we're shooting and we have really tough days of shoot, then the next morning starts with a lollipop treat for the whole crew. And, so you'll find everybody on set, the cast, the crew, everybody with a lollipop in their mouths. And that's usually because I think there's something about a lollipop which instantly turns us into kids. And then, all strife is forgotten, all issues are forgotten for just those 2 minutes. And if it's, if that's what it takes for everybody to just move on and get their energies back, then why not? It started off with my first film where we had more children, and they would keep asking for sweet treats and things. So we got them lollipops one day, and they loved it. And they said, can you get some for everybody else also? So we got them for the whole crew. And, I could see around me people just turning, and suddenly they're chasing, and grown men will come and say, but ma'am, I got only one, he got 2. So it was very interesting to see how that whole thing changed. And it's one of those things where usually I'll walk around with a bag of lollipops and hand over, one to everybody, and then they will be stealing and the bag will go missing, and this happens on every set. So somehow or the other, I think at least about 3-4 times in one movie we have our lollipop days. It just diffuses things and helps us be kids once again, and it's one of my favorite parts of the shooting.
Thank you, Deepa. That was a lovely question. We got to understand how she works. That was lovely. Thank you. Sapna Iyer, if we can bring in Sapna Iyer.
Hi.
Hi, Fatima.
Hi, Anjali. I'm a huge fan of yours, just like everyone else here. So my question to you is, how much of Anjali Menon goes into the music part of your film, be it Vanavile, be it Mangalyam? How do you actually, make your music directors, be it Ramesh Narayanan or Gopi Sundar, understand what emotions do you want? Because I know that, Mangalyam is such a huge hit. All of us were dancing that particular year, the year following that, be it Vanavile. And it's so beautifully filmed. So I just want to understand how much of Anjali Menon goes into the music of her film.
More than my music directors would like, I think. Because I think one thing that all of them will agree with is that I'm a complete pain to work with, that I drive them up the wall and keep saying I don't like it if I don't like it, and keep asking for changes and all of that. But the thing is that it really, I can get very, very irritating when it's really not going in the way. There was once a time when a music director, I don't want to take a name, said to me that, listen, the only thing I know about is music, so please don't tell me about music. And my only answer to him was that I don't even know about music, at least you know about music. And the only thing I know is about feeling. And this doesn't feel right. So, can we go back? I'm not telling you about your instruments or that, and I don't know about any of that. But I'm not getting the feeling I want to get. And I think they're all credit to all of them that they have been very patient with me. We've had fallouts and everything, but still, finally it all comes back fine, and we do get down and do the work. And I think that the emotional quality of the film really comes in from the script, the performances, the editing, and the music. When I'm including the sound design also in the editing. But so music has this huge capacity to shift emotions, and that's so important, the timing of it, the quality of it, and how all of this is tied in to our main narrative. So I remember with Gopi Sundar in Bangalore days, he started immediately, he does multiple films at the same time, so he started by giving reel by reel music, and it wasn't really going in the direction I wanted it. And then I requested him to watch the whole film in one go. And only then, he had not even watched the film. But then after doing that, then he couldn't stop watching it. So, once he watched it, and then the music which comes after that is completely different from everything we'd heard before that. So it takes that kind of engagement with the material. Same time in Pune, I was working with Raghu Dikshit, who, my God, Raghu is a phenomenal performer and musician, and yet someone with absolutely zero ego when it comes to making changes, doing it again until the director feels fine. And hats off to him for his patience with me, because it was quite big. And that I think I've been very fortunate with being able to work with multiple talents for the music. And yes, it's their beautiful talent which is in there, and our collaboration, I think, has helped them to develop more patience and eventually bring the most beautiful performances into the film, I think.
Thank you. Sona Mariam, if we can unmute Sona Mariam, please.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, Sona. Hi.
Before I ask you my question, I just want to tell you a huge thank you, because since a child, I was a huge bookworm. And then when I was around 10, my parents took me to the theater without even asking me. And we were watching Bangalore Days. And I felt that emotion that I had only felt while reading books without the loneliness of reading. And it was the best experience in my life. And since then, I've been watching a lot of movies, and it gave me that inspiration to become a director, and also to sort of have that love for film and art. So thank you so much for that. I'm literally shaking.
That's so lovely to know.
Okay, and this is my question. Your films often talk about very important and relative topics, but at the same time, it always has a sense of lightness and positivity. So as a director and as a writer, how do you ensure that this balance is maintained?
Well, there's that's not an easy question to answer, but it's a very good question, I must say. See, one can't just decide that, okay, this is going to be the mood of this film. You can't just really decide that, because you're working on these tiny blocks. You work on every scene, later you're working on every shot, and it's about combining these and creating this sort of layered, sort of dense fabric, which is what the audience will experience in one go. So I think it's about going in a certain rhythm. There's a certain flow. It's like music, where you'd have so many instruments, and to create a certain tune, you may not take that much, but to be able to arrange that music and to be able to get all of them to perform and create an emotion, that is something. So if you take the film apart, if you really dissect it, not everything will be full of positivity. There will be, in fact, if you do not have certain negative depths, you will not feel the positivity rising. So one needs to sort of achieve that balance of emotion as well. If you're in the same emotion throughout, you will be in a horizontal line, and that is really not interesting for us. There's a volatility which is desirable, which is which evokes further emotion in us. I like to when I'm after scripting the film, when I'm working on my pre-production, I like to actually make some kind of an emotional graph for my characters, which informs me about their real journey as actors, how what are the really sinking depths that they have to experience, and what are the real highs. And each of this is completely different. So when one is briefing the actors for a scene, I rarely brief them together. I prefer to take each of them apart and tell them about the scene, because they have to play it from their own perspective and not know what is going to be the general perspective of others. And that's when they bring to it their own, as individuals. And I think it's in that kind of, it's a sort of a dance we do. I don't know how to say it. It's not like a frame that, okay, I've decided this. I'm constantly experimenting. And it's not that I have a destination to go to. It's like when you're painting, if you already know what you're going to paint, that's a difficult thing, isn't it? You may know the subject, in Hindi, like they say, mota mota, but in the finer strokes, the brush strokes will evolve as it comes. So I think that's something now if you're directing, I'm sure it's something that you will discover. There's great pleasure in that. There's a really great pleasure to be found in that. So all the best to you for your work.
Thank you. If we can have Steffi Menon, please. Steffi Menon.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Steffi.
Ma'am, first of all, a huge fan of yours. Huge fan of yours. I'm like a lot of people said, a huge fan of your work, the things you speak about. This is for me a dream come true moment. So, ma'am, my question would be, what is that message you would like to give all aspiring filmmakers? He being one. What is that message or something you would like to tell us?
Just make film. Don't wait for anyone to come and give you an opportunity or anything. Today, we're all in such wonderful spaces of having technology at our hand, having so many things around us, having tutorials to learn from. It's so much richer an environment than when we started off. When I went to film school, you'd have to write to a university and wait for a month for them to send something to you, which, now you can just Google something and in 10 seconds you have what it takes. So when you have all of that, what are we waiting for? Just get out there and make as many films as we can. Tiny little films, hundreds and hundreds of them. That's the only thing which will hone our skills. So that just the doing of it. I know people who sit and wait for this opportunity and for this thing to happen and that thing to happen. I think, do not wait. We should go out there and make madcap films about everything we know and do not know about. I think that's the only thing. When, even if you're the associate director on a feature film, you will not know what it's like to be director until you direct. That hot seat is a different game. No matter how many films you have been associate director on, you will never figure that out. But at the same time, if you have made one short film with just a one-person crew, you will know more. And that whole journey of from writing it to, conceptualizing it, shooting it, editing it, making it, the sound design of it, putting the whole thing and giving it to an audience and listening to them. Go through that whole journey, how many ever times you can. And that's the most wonderful thing you can do for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. We have time for just 3 more questions. Alina Matthew. Alina Matthew, if you can unmute Alina, please.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Hello, ma'am. Namaskaram.
Hi, yeah. Namaskaram.
I'll echo everyone. I'm also a really big fan. I won't keep going on about that. I'll just echo everything everyone said. I was actually wanting to deviate a little from the cinema kind of related questions. As much as I'm inspired by that, I'm also very inspired by your work with WCC. That's something really great. You talked about swimming against the current, and that's really inspiring, but also kind of scary to do when the current's against you. Do you have advice for how to jump over that hurdle and where to find the courage to kind of do that?
How many hurdles will you jump over? So swim with it, make it work for yourself is what I would say. There is this little exercise, this creative exercise that we do in our workshops. It applies not just in this kind of a situation, but also with actors when you get kind of stuck in situations. When two people, they push against each other with equal force, what happens? If both are equally strong, nothing will move, right? You're stuck. But if you let go and you let the momentum of your problem, the other person is your biggest problem right then they will push you and you will go and land up in some place that you didn't intend against a wall. Instead, if you turn around and you let that problem push you, but you can see where you're going, you can use that problem's momentum to help you go where you want to go. So how does one turn that around? In any given situation, if there is a pressure, that pressure also has a momentum. So I think as a filmmaker, one has to constantly be on one's feet to say, what's happening here, what's happening here. You have to be observant. You have to really, you have to work on the ball. And in that time, these things will be revealed to you. It is up to us to see it, take advantage of it, and move ahead. Because that kind of, resourcefulness should not be just when you're making a film. It has to be in your own life. You have to be the hero of your life. Right? You cannot be just negotiating your way around everybody else. No, you have to get to where you want. So whatever the deal that you have been dealt, let's make that work for you. So I think just taking charge of one's own life, I think really, that is the very first step. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from Neeraj Nanda. If we could unmute Neeraj Nanda, please.
Hi, Anjali. How are you?
Hi, Neeraj. Very well, thank you.
I've been watching movies for the last 62 years,
Wow.
since the age of when I was 5 years. So, but I'm a journalist. So my question is, Anjali, tell me a bit about Anjali, the writer, who writes blogs and short stories. And do you enjoy it as much as directing a movie?
Actually, the writer is very lazy, I must say first. She works very little, but I do enjoy it very much. I really like to write. I'm trying to get better at it. I think the whole process of economy when one is writing, that is something that I really am trying to learn. Where I tend to overwrite when it comes to screenplay. So I'm trying to discipline myself by trying and writing in other places. And this year has all been about word count. I'm trying to say it in lesser and lesser words. And it's a process where I think I have a lot more to learn. Reading is the only way I can try to learn writing. And these kind of little things where I'm working outside of cinema, I think they inform my worldview a lot. When I write and I put something out there and people respond to it, then I seem to understand better what the thoughts exchanged are. And that really informs me as a person. I think it's a very rich process. And when someone says, they're a writer, I think that's a great deal of responsibility, because in a way you're a voice. You're a voice for many. And it's something I aspire to. So I can't yet say I'm there, but I would like to write more and more outside of cinema.
Thank you. We have one last question from Ashish Chawla. Ashish, you can ask your question now. We can unmute Ashish, please.
Hi, Anjali. How are you?
Very well. Hi, Ashish.
Hi. Do you have any plans to make any films in Melbourne or with the Australian audience?
I haven't visited, actually.
No?
I need to see it first. Yes. So when I'm visiting, I will be able to tell you, because it's just like with people. You have to visit places to really know what they're about. I don't have the talent of being able to plan shoots in places that I haven't visited.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Anjali, the first step towards that should be visiting the festival. Hopefully, you will join us, in person at the festival. That would be lovely. But thank you so much, Anjali. Thank you for the incredible cinema. Thank you for making films that have, that genuinely we're able to kind of get completely invested in, and for giving us characters that I think that stay with us long after we watch those films, and also for this wonderfully candid chat, really giving us a sense into how you work and how you create those beautiful stories and those characters. Thank you very much. Can't wait to see what you do next. No 4 years this time. Sooner rather than later, hopefully. And I'm going to let Neetu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to let Neetu sort of sign off. Neetu, if you'll say.
Anjali, thank you so much. It's just been so nice to meet you, hear you speak. Every word is so inspiring, and I've just been. I think we can all spend hours just listening to you speak with so much passion and warmth, and thank you so much. And I think we, like Rajeev said, I so hope you'll give us an opportunity to welcome you to Melbourne, and
to come.
Yeah, and we can just
come, and I hope we can make it happen soon.
Yes,
everything is good and safe for everybody till then, and
yes,
let's hope all happen.
And on behalf of our community here, Fred would like to say a few words, and thank you everyone who's joined us today. It's so good to spend a cloudy, very gloomy Saturday afternoon in Melbourne, but just being so warmed up by all of you. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to Fred.
I would just like to say a couple of words, please. I usually, engage in interviews and things closer to the release of the film. As you would know, I don't do too many of them, but it's extremely heartening when one sees, even the past work that people are so engaged with it and want to discuss it. That is something really, really special, and I'm so touched by all the warmth that everybody's put in today with just coming here together and all the questions and everything. Thank you, Rajeev. Thank you, Neetu, for making it happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anjali, before we close off for the night, thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful day and wonderful time that you've spent. It's almost felt like we've sat through another Anjali Menon film, the amount of entertainment and the amount of information that you've passed on. But thank you so much for doing this from Australia, and നമ്മുടെ side in Melbourne Australia side we have a small little bit of a surprise for you. Maybe you might be aware of this or not. You've created some wonderful characters on screen for us. You've created some wonderful, beautiful moments on screen, that have stayed with us audiences for years. We still look back at movies like Ustad Hotel, and we still reminisce those moments. Thank you for that. In those processes, you created some wonderful relationships as well, with star cast and with the team who've created this movie. And we've got one of those kind of relationship long back with for a number of fans who may not know. This is from your first movie, Manjadi Kuru. Mm-hmm. We've got one of the child protagonists who played Manikutti in your movie, studying as a student in Brisbane here. In Australia. So we've got her online as well. Francoise, if you could just unmute Arati, she would like to have a chat.
That is such a lovely thing.
And we can hear from her about you rather than you talking about your movies, a little bit on what you are on set. So Arati.
Hi Anjali Ji, how are you?
Such a lovely surprise. Oh my goodness.
I'm so happy I got to talk to you after such a long time. I'm so thankful for this. This is so great. I'm just so happy meeting you.
Absolutely. Do you remember those times?
I do remember bits and parts of it, and then rest of them my parents have told me. I'm kind of nervous. I'm kind of shaking to talk to you right now.
Oh my! Aarti was 5 years old in that film, and I still remember her casting audition where all the other kids came in and performed, and she was the only child who I was talking to the parents, and she was blissfully unaware, and she kept traipsing around the entire room, climbing on the curtains and the sofa and everything, and I fell completely in love with her. Oh, I'm so thrilled to see you.
Me too. I'm just so thrilled. Even like at times, even in the sets, like you just talked about the lollipop, and I was just so happy. I remember that, like how we just got sweet and we all just hang out at sometimes. I remember like some parts of it, even in the pool, and even sometimes in scenes, the last scene, I remember like that's the small thing that I actually like remember so well, that at the end of the movie where we were like had to separate from each other, there was a scene we had to like cry and say bye. Like you were just telling us that we were actually getting separated and how attached we all like got together to the end of the movie. We were actually crying in that scene. I actually remember that.
The children weren't acting at all because they fell in love with each other, and at the end of the schedule we shot that on the last day. And I still remember I was walking away and they were saying bye to me in that last shot with you and Kannan.
Yeah, it was great. It's just, I'm so happy that I got to talk to you.
This is the most special thing for me. Lovely to see you.
So much. I watched all your movies and I love them. They're so beautiful. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, me too, Fred. This is just amazing for me. I have to take a screenshot of this. Very special. Please say something, Aarti. Otherwise, I'm gonna, not have you on the screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Just.
Thank you so much, Anjali. It's such a beautiful, beautiful afternoon, and you all filled it with so much warmth. I got a bit teary when Aarti came and.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I have to say something here. If I can take 2 extra minutes. When Aarti came in, she was just 5, like I said, and her parents used to take turns to come and stay with us. And initially, her mom came and stayed with us for quite a while, and then she had to go back. Then the father came in, and I remember him standing outside the set one day, and he said, "I just wanted to say something." And this was at the end of the day. And this was when we had all these actresses around, and all of them would have an assistant carrying their bag or something. And he was telling me, he was waiting there to tell me how when they came in, Aarti used to have to be, she had to be given a bath, she had to be fed and all of that. But that morning, when he woke up, or I think when he got the newspaper and came back, he found her dressed and ready with, her bag and everything completely seated, and she's waiting for him to go to set. And then she tells him, so he says, "Have you eaten? Are you ready?" She says, "I'm completely ready. I just need somebody to carry my bag." So there are so many incidents like that. So it is absolutely lovely to see you, Aarti. Please give my love to your parents as well.
They're watching you. They're watching you live, Anjali.
Oh, that's lovely. Are they with us in this session? Yeah. Can I see them, please?
Yes. Francois, you might have to.
We became one big family. I'm sorry I'm turning this into a family reunion here.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely. It's so beautiful. We feel a part of that extended family. Fred, who do we need to unmute?
Francois, Sasikumar Paravanur. I'm just sending you the name. See if you can locate them.
So many beautiful memories from that time.
There they are.
Hello, Anjali. Hello,
well,
there they are.
Sorry, can you speak up, please? It would come on the screen then.
Speak.
Hello, Anjali.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my God, it's so lovely to see you.
Yeah, very happy to see you. Really wonderful.
This is so beautiful. Very, very nice. This is terrible. I need to give all of you a hug. Oh, this is lovely. Oh, we must all catch up.
Yes.
For sure. We are all sending you virtual hugs.
My elder daughter.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely. This is really special for me. This takes it way above any other interview I have done.
Yay. So glad we succeeded in doing that, Meetu. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
High five, Fred.
High five.
But thank you so much, Anjali. It's just
Thank
so
you so much.
beautiful. Really, thank you. And Rajeev, thank you as always. You're just so awesome. Thank you for how generous you are with your time and support. So thank you. And Fred, you brought so much warmth and such a beautiful moment for all of us, and it gives us an insight into Anjali even more. So thank you, and lovely to meet you, Aarti. And Anjali, once again, thank you. I so hope we get to see you in person very soon. Lots and lots and lots of love from all of us in Melbourne and the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne. Thank you so much. See you guys. Thank you, everyone.